My name is Nathan Briggs. I'm 41 years old. For most of my adult life I served as a paramedic, 15 years of saving lives, pulling people out of wrecks, fighting to keep strangers breathing. I never thought the person I loved most would walk away while I was the one lying helpless in a hospital bed. But that's exactly what happened. This is the story of how I lost everything, and how I took back even more. I remember the beep of the machines more than anything else. That steady mechanical rhythm that marked time in a place where minutes felt like hours. 3 days after the accident I woke up in the ICU, confused, weak and tethered to more wires than I could count. I couldn't move much. Broken ribs, fractured leg, a punctured lung. My body had taken the hit, but I would soon find out my heart was about to take the real blow. Her face wasn't there. That was the first thing. Michelle, my wife of 12 years, wasn't at my bedside. No worried eyes, no trembling hands holding mine. Just the antiseptic smell of the hospital, and the detached kindness of the night nurse who adjusted my IV. "You're lucky," she said softly. "You pulled through." Lucky? I wondered about that. It was another 2 days before I could sit up, and on that morning, a social worker came in carrying a stack of papers and a clipboard. They needed information for insurance, she said. Michelle had already provided most of it, apparently. That nagging feeling tightened in my chest, not the broken ribs, something worse. I asked for my phone. The nurse hesitated but finally handed it over. Dozens of missed calls from coworkers. A few from extended family. None from Michelle. No texts, no voicemails. Nothing. I swallowed down the dread and tried logging into our bank app. An instinct more than a conscious thought. Password error. I tried again. Slower. Same result. Account locked, due to suspicious activity. I felt a chill creep up my spine that had nothing to do with the hospital's cold air. Using the hospital Wi-Fi, I accessed the bank's website through the desktop browser, resetting my password using security questions only. I would know. When the page finally loaded, my mouth went dry. Checking account 1.72 savings close. Retirement account transfer pending. It didn't register at first. I stared at the numbers, refreshing the page again and again as if sheer disbelief would change the reality staring back at me. Michelle had drained everything, while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed fighting for my life. She had emptied our accounts clean, left me with nothing but a shattered body and a broken world. I didn't say anything when the nurse came back to check my vitals. I didn't react when the physical therapist told me we'd start mobility exercises tomorrow. I just sat there, gripping the hospital phone so tightly that the IV line tugged painfully at my hand. I must have looked like any other trauma patient, stunned, weak, tired. But inside, something cold was crystallizing, layer by layer, a numbness thicker than any morphine drip they could have pumped into my veins. Michelle thought she had taken everything. She thought I would wake up to find myself powerless, abandoned, defeated. What she didn't know, what she had forgotten, was the one thing I had always kept secret, even from her. The safe. The old steel safe my grandfather left me, hidden behind a false panel in our bedroom closet, filled not with jewelry or guns but with the only thing that mattered now, leverage. And I wasn't going to say a single word to her about it. Not yet. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the pale gray walls, I realized that the worst wounds weren't the ones stitched across my skin. They were the invisible ones, betrayal sharp enough to cut bone deep. I replayed everything in my head, frame by frame, with the clarity that only pain and loneliness can sharpen. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of partnership, promises, plans. Where had it gone wrong? Had I been blind, or just unwilling to see the slow unraveling happening right in front of me? The signs had been there. Of course. They always are. When you look back. Little things at first. Michelle becoming oddly secretive about money, picking up extra side gigs without telling me. Her constant irritation when I asked about her day, like basic conversation was some unbearable burden. She'd started locking her phone, guarding it like it held the nuclear codes. There were nights she stayed out late, and told me not to wait up, and mornings where she was already gone before I woke up. I didn't push her. I didn't demand answers. I thought marriage meant trusting even when it hurt. I thought loyalty meant patience. I thought wrong. Now, she had made her choice. When I was helpless, when I couldn't defend myself, she saw her opportunity. And she took it, cleared our accounts with clinical precision, like a surgeon cutting out a tumor. Only this time the tumor was me, and yet in her rush to erase me, Michelle had forgotten that real survival isn't about what's in the bank. It's about what's tucked away where no one can touch it. That safe wasn't just a hiding place for valuables. It was a time capsule of preparation. Inside were backup copies of our marriage certificate, property deeds, insurance policies, and most importantly, my grandfather's life insurance bond. One he had left specifically in my name after he'd passed, worth more than 6 figures. Untouchable without my physical signature, witnessed and notarized. Michelle didn't even know it existed. She thought she had bled me dry. Not even close. By the time the hospital discharged me a week later, I had a plan taking shape. Cold and deliberate. I wasn't going to storm into the house screaming, wasn't going to send angry texts or show up at her new address demanding answers. That's what she would expect. That's what people like her always expect. Emotion chaos. A desperate broken man lashing out. But I had learned something in that hospital. Pain. Real pain. Teaches you patience. Teaches you that the best revenge isn't noise. It's silence. It's calculated. It's precise. It's inevitable. When the nurse wheeled me outside to the pickup area, I wasn't the same man who had been carried into that ICU a month ago. I was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. I had no house to return to, no shared bank account to access, no loving spouse waiting to help me heal. But I did have a safe full of forgotten leverage and a will stronger than iron. It was time to rebuild. But not in the way Michelle thought. Not as her abandoned casualty. Not as her pity story. As her biggest, coldest regret. The first night out of the hospital, I didn't go home. I didn't even drive by the house. I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town under a different name. Cash payment. No paper trail. The room was small, smelled faintly of mildew, and the mattress had more lumps than a battlefield, but it was mine. More importantly, it was away from her. From whatever life she was already building without me. I sat on the edge of that stiff bed for a long time, just staring at the crumpled bank statements I had printed at the hospital. Every transaction was a blow. Restaurant dinners I hadn't eaten. Spa visits I hadn't known about. Jewelry stores. Hotel booking, and then the final withdrawal that had cleaned out everything we built together. Michelle hadn't just left me broke. She had paraded her betrayal through every dollar she spent. And still I didn't call her. I didn't even text. She would be expecting rage. Expecting desperate calls, tearful confrontations, accusations. That's the natural script when someone gets betrayed this way. But I had learned something during those long, drugged-out nights under the fluorescent lights of the ICU. Control is everything. If she thought she had broken me, then she had already lost, because the real power wasn't in what she had taken. It was in what I was about to do next. The following morning I rented a small sedan and drove to the house. I parked a block away, staying low, watching. A strange car was in the driveway. Not mine. Her boyfriend's, maybe. Or whoever it was she was entertaining now. I waited. Patience had become my sharpest weapon. When the coast was clear, I slipped around the back, staying close to the fences. I still had my keys. She hadn't thought to change the locks yet, too busy spending what wasn't hers to remember the simple things. I let myself in through the back door, quiet as a shadow, and went straight to the bedroom. The closet door creaked open at my touch. Still there. The hidden panel was undisturbed. Exactly where I had left it. I peeled it back carefully, and there it was. The safe, heavy, old, ugly. A relic from another time, but inside it held my survival. My proof. My future. It took me less than a minute to spin the combination. The safe opened with a heavy click and the documents were there, perfectly intact. Copies of deeds, old bank records, the life insurance bond, notarized statements from accounts Michelle didn't even know existed. I pulled everything out, stacking it neatly into a battered duffel bag. I didn't linger. I didn't look around at the house I had bled for, sweated for, built with my own hands only to have it turned into a stranger's playground. I didn't even check for photos, mementos, or keepsakes. They meant nothing now. At the front door, I paused for just a second, looking back one last time. Not out of sadness, out of calculation. She had declared war on me, the moment she drained that account. And war wasn't fought with emotions. It was fought with information, with leverage, and with cold, unbreakable patience. The house wasn't mine anymore, not really. But the consequences of what she had done, those still belonged to me. And I was about to make sure she paid every single cent of them. I drove straight to an old friend's office. Jacob Mallory, divorce attorney, former Army JAG officer, and one of the few people I trusted with my life. We hadn't talked much in the last couple of years. Life had pulled us in different directions, but when I called and said I needed help, he didn't even hesitate. "Come now," he said, voice sharp with the instinct of a man who had heard too many war stories. both overseas and at home. Jacob's office was tucked inside a modest brick building downtown. No fancy signs, no gleaming marble floors. Just results. The kind you didn't hear about on TV, but saw in the courtroom where it mattered. I limped inside, duffel bag slung over my good shoulder, heart pounding harder than it had in weeks. When I dumped the contents of the bag onto his conference table, deeds, account records, insurance bonds, notarized letters, Jacob whistled low under his breath. "Jesus, Nate," he said. "You weren't just married. You were prepared for war." "I had a feeling," I said simply. He nodded, understanding more than I said. "Let's get to work." Over the next few hours, Jacob laid out the map for a counteroffensive. Not loud, not messy. Surgical. Efficient. We would file a fraud complaint for the unauthorized draining of joint assets. File an injunction preventing the sale or refinancing of any shared property without my express consent. Challenge any attempt she made to claim marital assets based on her misconduct. And most importantly, leverage the insurance bond and unregistered assets to rebuild my financial foundation quietly before she even realized what was happening. There was one sticking point though: proof. Bank statements showed the money drain. Sure, but proving intent, proving that Michelle had acted maliciously, would require more. That's when I remembered the cameras. Home security. Installed 2 years ago after a break-in scare in the neighborhood. Cameras she probably hadn't even thought about since then. Cameras that uploaded everything automatically to cloud storage I still had access to. I pulled out my phone, logged into the app, and there it was. Footage of Michelle coming and going, hauling bags, hosting strangers in her home, using my house as her personal playground while I lay hooked up to machines 100 miles away. Jacob leaned over my shoulder, watching silently. "That's more than enough," he said finally, his voice colder now, professional. "Get me copies. Every minute you can find." I spent the next 3 days at the motel, piecing together my case. In between painful physical therapy sessions and exhausting follow-ups with doctors, I sat on that lumpy bed, cataloging evidence like a man building a fortress brick by brick. I didn't text Michelle. I didn't call. Let her think I was broken, lost, helpless. Let her feel safe. Because the safest place for a liar is when they believe the person they betrayed can't fight back. I wasn't just fighting back. I was planning to take everything she thought she had won, and rip it away so quietly she wouldn't even hear it coming. 3 weeks after walking out of that hospital, I was ready. Not to confront Michelle, that would have been a waste of time and energy, but to dismantle the web she thought she had spun around me, piece by piece. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. Jacob filed the first motion without warning. A full injunction on the house, freezing any attempts to sell, refinance, or transfer ownership. Simultaneously, we filed for immediate financial discovery, forcing her to account for every missing dollar she had siphoned out of our joint accounts. A copy of the motion was delivered to her workplace, not her home, just to twist the knife a little deeper. Let her answer awkward questions from coworkers. Let her sweat. I didn't see her reaction. I didn't need to. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in weeks. Michelle's. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. Declined the call without answering. Let her stew in silence. 10 minutes later, a text came through instead. "Can we talk? Please." I didn't reply. Control wasn't just about action now. It was about absence. About letting her feel the void she created when she decided my loyalty was disposable. Later that night, I logged into the security system again, half expecting her to have figured it out and disabled the cameras. She hadn't. There she was, pacing the kitchen, waving her phone around, yelling at someone unseen. Maybe her new boyfriend. Maybe herself. The woman who had so calmly emptied our accounts while I lay broken was unraveling, and she didn't even know the worst was yet to come. Jacob had dug deeper while I focused on recovery. Bank records. Hidden Venmo transactions. Credit card purchases linked to hotels and restaurants I'd never set foot in. He found enough for not just a divorce settlement weighted heavily in my favor, but criminal charges if I wanted to push it that far. And oh, how tempting it was. But revenge wasn't the mission. Freedom was. I wasn't going to waste my second chance at life dragging a dead marriage behind me like a ball and chain. I wanted out. Clean. Complete. And leaving nothing she could touch. The day we filed the countersuit, Jacob smirked across his desk at me. "She thinks you're still bleeding out somewhere," he said. "She has no idea you're already rebuilding." "Let's keep it that way," I said. Because while Michelle was still playing checkers, jumping over small squares and grabbing what she could reach, I was 5 moves ahead, playing chess. and she was already cornered without even knowing it. The court hearing was set for a Monday morning. Michelle tried to delay it, of course. Filed for continuances. Claimed confusion about the finances. Claimed she didn't understand the nature of the withdrawals. Claimed she thought the house was a joint asset she could manage freely, all of it neatly destroyed by Jacob's mountain of evidence, each file and timestamp like a slow tightening of a noose she had woven herself. I sat quietly in the back of the courtroom when she walked in. She looked thinner, drawn, her confidence leaking out through every nervous glance she shot toward the judge's bench. Her lawyer, a cheap overworked general practice guy she must have found last minute, shuffled papers and whispered furiously in her ear. It wouldn't help. Nothing would. Michelle didn't even look at me. She couldn't. The hearing itself lasted barely an hour. Jacob spoke clearly, professionally, laying out the timeline, my hospitalization, the unauthorized transactions, the attempt to sell our marital property without my consent, the forged documents Michelle had submitted to the bank, the security footage showing strangers in our house, the place I'd built with my own 2 hands. When Michelle's turn came, her voice shook so badly the judge had to ask her twice to repeat herself. It was a misunderstanding, she stammered. We were having problems. I thought he was leaving me, while he was unconscious in a hospital bed. The judge asked, one eyebrow raised so high it practically disappeared into his hairline. Michelle crumbled right there, not with screams or tears but with something quieter and more pitiful. She simply sagged in her chair, realization settling into her bones that there was no rescue coming, no easy escape. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. Full ownership of the house awarded solely to me. Mandatory repayment of stolen funds, plus damages. No claim to my future military pension. Court costs assigned entirely to her. And just for good measure, the ruling referred all forgery evidence to the county prosecutor's office for potential criminal investigation. Michelle didn't speak, didn't cry, just nodded numbly as the world she thought she had stolen collapsed piece by piece around her. I walked out of that courthouse into the crisp fall air and stood for a moment on the steps, breathing it in like a free man. The worst was over. The battle fought and won not with rage but with patience, with silence, with strategy, and she never saw it coming. The house didn't feel like home anymore. After the court ruling, I changed the locks, disabled the old alarm system, and went back once to walk through it room by room. Everything was technically mine again, but the air inside those walls was heavy, tainted. I could still see ghost images. Michelle's laughter echoing off the kitchen tiles, the indentation of another man's boots by the front door. Strangers' shadows caught forever in security camera stills. It wasn't grief that I felt walking through the empty rooms. It was freedom. And it was time to leave. I called a real estate agent, an old army buddy who'd gone civilian and built a reputation for honest work. I didn't tell him the full story. I didn't need to. I just said I wanted it sold, quietly, cleanly, for cash if possible. Within a month we had a buyer, a young family full of hope and plans for the future, the kind of energy that the house deserved but could no longer give me. I signed the final papers on a gray Tuesday morning. Wired the proceeds directly into the separate bank account I had built back up, piece by piece. No fanfare, no lingering goodbyes. I drove away with nothing but a battered duffel bag, my discharge papers, and a deep, profound sense of finality. The first thing I did was buy a small piece of land 2 hours outside of town. 10 acres, thick with pine trees and bordered by a river so clear you could see the stones on the bottom. There was an old cabin on it. Nothing fancy, but it was sturdy and real and untouched by betrayal. I spent the first week cleaning it out, patching up the roof, fixing the porch steps with my own hands. Physical work. Honest work. Work that healed something inside me no doctor ever could. I adopted a dog, a German shepherd named Ranger from the local shelter. Big, scarred, overlooked by everyone else. A survivor like me. He took to the cabin instantly, patrolling the woods like he was guarding a kingdom. Loyal and fierce and utterly without judgment. Nights were the hardest at first. Too quiet. Too full of memories trying to claw their way back. But every time the weight of it threatened to drag me under, I would walk down to the river, stand barefoot in the cold rushing water, and remind myself, I survived. Not just the accident. Not just the betrayal. I survived her. And I had built something she could never touch. A few months after settling into the cabin, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled across the front in a handwriting I hadn't seen in almost a year. I knew it was from Michelle before I even opened it. For a long moment I stood there on the porch, Letter trembling slightly in my hands as Ranger circled my boots. Sensing my hesitation, part of me didn't want to know. Part of me was afraid the anger, the sadness, the betrayal might find a way back in if I let it. But another part, the part that had endured the hospital, the empty bank accounts, the courtroom, knew better. Knew that closure sometimes came not from answers but from finality. I opened it. It wasn't long. A few paragraphs of regret, confusion, half-hearted apologies. She said she didn't know why she had done it, that she missed the life we built, that she hoped someday I could forgive her, even if she didn't deserve it. I read it once, then folded it carefully and tossed it into the fire pit where Ranger and I often sat under the stars. Watched it curl and blacken and disappear into the night sky, just like the future we were supposed to have. Forgiveness isn't about absolving someone else. It's about setting yourself free, and I had already done that. Word drifted back to me over time through mutual acquaintances, through whispered small-town gossip. Michelle's life hadn't exactly turned out the way she had imagined. The new boyfriend had disappeared after the legal trouble started. The money she thought she had secured evaporated in legal fees and court-ordered repayments. She moved to a small apartment 2 towns over, started working part-time at a dentist office, living paycheck to paycheck, and I didn't feel anything about it. Not hate, not satisfaction, nothing. Her story wasn't mine anymore. Mine was the river, the cabin, Ranger chasing squirrels through the pines. Mine was the freedom to rebuild a life from ashes without carrying the weight of betrayal on my back. Mine was the quiet mornings, the honest work, the soft hum of peace filling up all the spaces anger once lived in. Sometimes I'd get letters from other veterans who had heard about my case through legal circles, men and women who had faced their own betrayals while they wore the uniform. Some thanked me for fighting back, for showing them they didn't have to accept being broken. Those letters I kept pinned to the wall above my workbench where I could see them every day. They were reminders that survival isn't just about walking away. It's about walking towards something better. And that's exactly what I had done. No bitterness, no revenge obsession, just freedom, carved with my own 2 hands, one quiet day at a time.